It's so foggy. I can't believe I took this free ticket. I should have just left it and said no thank you. Why did I not pack my boots? Why did I not? Why? I wasn't thinking. At least I have my pistol and my frying pan. And thank God I don't have Dodo with me.
My Daughter's Keeper presents Call of Cthulhu, Alone Against the Tide, by Nicholas Johnson. Episode 1, Something's in the Water, where academia meets aquatic dread, and the tide isn't the only thing coming in. The sun sinks low on the horizon as you board the ferry headed across the lake to Esbury. As you set foot on the boat, the ferryman greets you with a wide smile and a cheery wave. He stands by the gangplank as you pass, welcoming the other passengers as he removes his cap to scratch at his balding head. His pudgy figure fills his well-worn suit. He looks a little awkward, but he seems rather pleasant. Leaving the man behind, you take a seat towards the prow, eyes fixed on your destination. You settle into a seat with your thin briefcase resting on your lap, noticing the rest of the passengers are likewise getting comfortable for the short trip across the lake. Glancing around, you catch sight of the ferryman entering the cabin. As you sit patiently and wait for the engine to come to life, you listen to the sounds of idle chatter around you. You look out across the water and notice a thin fog beginning to form over the surface of the water as the temperature drops with the approach of night. After a few minutes, you hear the engine splutter into action and feel the ferry lurch forward. The conversations around you continue as the ferryman joins you on deck. You can't help overhearing most of the talk, though it's surprisingly banal. There are almost a dozen passengers on the ferry. Most of them are simply looking to spend their money during their weekend in Esbury, and to enjoy the various shops and leisure activities the lakeside town has to offer. Many of the passengers seem to come from money, as is common in Esbury. You notice a strange look from one of the women in the group. She has a full figure and brown hair and eyes. She seems to be looking you over, admiring your features. The woman clearly sees something in you that she likes. Perhaps it's your looks or a glint of intelligence in your eyes. She gives you a sly wink before turning back to her companions. You likewise turn your attention to the rest of the passengers. Sitting apart from the general crowd are two men in dark, well-tailored suits, whispering quietly to each other. They have unamused expressions on their faces, as if they don't seem pleased to be here. Perhaps they're on business. Noticing that you're sitting alone, the ferryman approaches you and stands over you with his characteristic smile. You notice he's missing a tooth in the upper left corner of his mouth. His eyes are bright as they light upon you. "Good afternoon. You're looking a bit lonely there, friend. What brings you to Esbury?" You mention the passing of a distant colleague in Esbury, and how you've been sent by Mr. Tonic to recover his work and bring it back to the university. The man sighs and nods slowly. "You mean Professor Harris? Real shame what happened to him. Always seemed like such a nice man. Officer Powell says they're still cleaning up the mess at the professor's place, but some of the more valuable bits will probably be at the estate sale tonight, if you're really wanting it." The man looks down at his hands for a moment, and then back at you as he extends one your way. "Anyway, I'm Lance Sanford. Pleased to meet you, but I wish it were under better circumstances, eh?"
Right, we have our first choice of the scenario. You can inquire about Professor Harris. You can inquire about Officer Powell. Ask Lance Sanford about himself. Ask about the estate sale. Or you can just pass the time until you arrive at Esbury.
I'll ask neighbors, Sanders.
You ask Sanford about himself, and he beams a big bright smile your way.
"I've lived in Esbury for years, since before all these rich folks found the place and turned it into their little vacation spot. My father owned the ferry that go to and from the town. He passed it on to me when he came too old to look after it himself. I love it here. I can't imagine living anywhere else. The lake's so clear and clean. I guess that's why we get so many visitors. This place has definitely grown since I was younger, though. Sometimes I miss the way things were before, but I love Esbury all the same, even now. You'll like it here, too.
Sanford winks at you. You exchange a few more pleasantries with Sanford before he goes off to finish guiding the boat into port. You pass the time in casual conversation with the other passengers and in observing the scenery. You note the tall pines and the sloping hills along the shoreline around Esbury. These features and the small town beyond are just visible through the growing mist, but squinting helps make them out to your satisfaction. In time, you arrive on the pier at Esbury, grateful to be off the water. You take your first steps onto the pier with the rest of the ferry passengers trying to get your land legs again. The passengers still chat casually as they walk off to their destinations. You note one last little flirty wink from the full-figured woman as she struts along confidently behind the women accompanying her, and you feel the two dark-suited men push past you at a brisk pace, nudging you out of their way. Sanford gives you one last wave and smile as he begins tending to the old rust-stained boat that is his pride and joy. The last light of the sun is fading fast, and the fog is growing thick on the water now. The night is still young, but you would rather not be wandering around in the dark or in the fog of a town you are unfamiliar with. Taking in your surroundings, you see a sizable crowd jockeying for entrance to a lavish, modern-looking building along the lakeside. A folding sign sits out front, illuminated by a lantern. The words, "Estate sale tonight," are written in large, bold letters. While this seems to be the main attraction, you could also seek out somewhere to stay for the night and set about your work in the morning.
Okay, let's decide what we're doing then. Are you going to visit the estate sale, or are you going to find somewhere to stay the night?
I'll find somewhere to stay the night.
While the estate sale seems interesting, you would feel more secure with a roof over your head for the night. You pull someone out of the crowd and inquire as to where you can find a room to rent. You're directed a few blocks into town to a modestly priced hotel a few blocks down from Esbury's police station. As you enter in from the cool night air, you're greeted by the heat of a roaring fire. The small front room feels stuffy and cramped. The bulk of the space is dominated by the service counter, behind which a wiry-looking wisp of a woman sits. She turns her wide eyes to you and asks your name, then quotes you a price that's more than fair. With the transaction complete, you haul your thin briefcase up the stairs, unpack it, and settle into your room for the night. You wake in the morning grateful for the rest. You rise from your bed and take in the modest surroundings that make up your room. The furnishings are sparse, a small, poor-quality dresser, and a cramped and dusty writing desk tucked in the corner. Sitting atop the desk is a plate of eggs and toast, apparently set out for you by the hotel's owner. The walls are plain and unadorned, save for a single window that faces towards the lake. However, this view is currently blocked by the incredibly thick fog, which has taken on a pale green hue. Your vision is obscured entirely, and you cannot see into the depths of the outlandish green mist. You also notice your personal belongings placed around the room, exactly where you left them the night before. After getting dressed and eating the modest breakfast set out for you, you're ready to begin your day. You take a moment to consider what you mean to do. Your mind turns to Professor Harris. If you're so inclined, you might be able to investigate the circumstances of his death further. Considering that you don't have his widow Amelia's address, you would have to start your search with the official report filed with Officer Powell at the police station. Alternatively, you could take this free time to look through your belongings and examine any items you might have. The hotel owner has been in your room, so a check of your things might be in order. Or perhaps you have some other reason to look over your possessions. Finally, if you feel that your business in Esbury is concluded, you could always try and find Lance Sanderfoot at the ferry.
Right, you've got a choice. You can either go to the police station, look over your items, or go to the ferry.
I'll go to the ferry.
You pause to consider the strange green coloration of the fog and its incredible thickness. You wonder if it's even safe to be out here on the water with visibility so limited. You decide to head to the docks first to see if the ferry is still running before hauling all of your possessions down to the lakeshore. You venture out into the cloying green mist and walk briskly towards the docks. You arrive to find Sanford pacing the deck of his boat with a small flask in his hand. He stares out into the fog, lost in thought, before you rouse him by inquiring about passage out of town. He confirms your fears.
Sorry, I ain't taking her out like this. I can barely see 3 feet in front of me. The lake's fairly tame, but I'd have no way of telling where the shore is or any other boats might be out in the water. I like you, but it's too dangerous. I can't risk it. I've rarely seen a fog this thick, and it's green. Never seen anything like it. I'm staying put.
You know that nothing you say could possibly convince him. Resigned to your fate, you head back towards the rest of town.
Right, are you going to visit the police station or return to your hotel?
I'll return to my hotel.
Feeling that it's the best course of action right now, you return to your room at the hotel. You turn the key in the lock, and your door swings open to reveal a startling scene. Your room has been ransacked. The bed is overturned, and the covers strewn about. The dresser drawers have all been pulled out and emptied. Your briefcase lies open on the floor. Anything of value you had is gone. Anything you may have gained from the estate sale is no longer in your possession. And anything you brought with you beyond the basic essentials is likewise missing. The window hangs open, letting in the greenish mist into the room. You close it to keep out the chill and begin setting things straight while you overcome your shock at what has happened. As you consider your options, the sounds of a loud and violent commotion drift in from the room next door.
Do you ignore the scuffle, or do you go to investigate?
I'll ignore it.
You're going to be really boring about this one, aren't you?
No, I'm not!
You hear the clattering and banging in the next room and pointedly ignore it. Whatever may be going on in there, it doesn't involve you. You finish setting things straight and take a deep breath, pondering your options. You have precious few. You could see if the hotel owner saw anyone coming and going. The establishment is small, and they would likely notice anything going on. Maybe that way you could set about recovering your lost belongings. Another option is to continue your investigation surrounding the late Professor Harris and his artifacts. You could go into town and gather more information. Alternatively, you could just cut your losses and leave. The ferry won't be running with the fog as dense as it is, but you could set out into the woods and try circling the lake. This may take several hours of walking through the wilderness in the mist, but with a little luck, you may be able to make it back to the road before nightfall.
Are you going to search for your belongings that have gone missing, continue your investigation, or leave town?
I'll continue with my investigation.
You step out into the fog, hoping to find someone in town who can give you a little more information. Unfortunately, the town seems to be largely deserted, as people prefer to remain inside with the thick mist obscuring your sight. You wander for a little more than an hour before you find someone moving quickly home from the town's grocery store. You stop the gentleman and press him for answers. He appears nervous and says he doesn't want to be out in damn scary fog any longer than he has to. You assure him that it will only take a few moments, and the man agrees to answer your questions the best he can. You ask about Professor Harris, and the man nods somberly.
Dead. Suicide, they say. I don't really know if I buy that. The professor was a good man, and happy, too, so long as he had his things. Between you and me, I think his widow has something to do with it. She was a bit young for him and didn't seem too fond of him neither. Her eyes tended to wander, if you catch my meaning, and she goes and sells all his things when he dies, so that's sort of telling, ain't it?
You take in the new information silently, weighing the credibility in your head as you inquire further. You ask about Professor Harris's things, and the gentleman scratches his head.
Old stuff from India. I don't know much about it. I heard him talk about it from time to time. Said it was mostly religious things. Every once in a while he'd get a visitor wanting to look at him. Usually left upset. Can't say why.
At this, the man begins shifting uncomfortably and asks if he can go. You decide he has no more to offer, and you allow him to leave. Armed with this new information, you set out to find Amelia, assuming her to be at her home. You wander through the streets for a while as the sun sinks lower and lower. The growing dark exacerbates the lack of visibility, and you are soon lost among Esbury's buildings. Eventually, you find yourself in front of the hotel. You stop and use this landmark to orientate yourself until your thoughts are disturbed by what sound like footsteps. You pause outside the hotel doorway, listening for the sounds of footsteps. The streets are eerily still and nearly silent. You fancy you hear something and set off in the general direction of the sounds. You wander the streets for what feels like hours. Your suspicions are seemingly confirmed as it gets harder and harder to see. The lack of visibility caused by the mist, compounded by the fading light. Dusk falls hard and fast, and you are left roaming the streets in the darkness. As you contemplate abandoning your task, you tense up and freeze as you hear a nauseating, squelching sound suddenly from behind you. A sense of terror washes over you as the unexpected sound breaks the silence. You are ruled by a sense of unease and are driven to run. Though you don't know why, you do not wish to find out.
Okay, roll time. You're going to want to make a dexterity roll, so let's get those dice going.
Okay. Please be good. 11.
Ooh, yes, 11 on 70. That
Okay.
is real. That's an extreme.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Let's find out where this goes then, shall we?
Yeah.
You quickly duck into the hotel, avoiding whoever or whatever else is out there. You pause for a few minutes to gather your thoughts. Darkness has come, and your job is not yet done. With perseverance, you may yet finish your task. The most obvious choice is to resume the investigation. Another potential course of action is simply to cut your losses and leave. You could try to abandon Esbury on foot, and you must admit that the idea is tempting despite being wholly impractical. This place has not been good to you. Of course, you could always simply sleep on it, stay another night in the hotel, and hope to either continue your work or move in the morning. You aren't certain why, but you feel a vague sense of unease at the idea of spending a second night here. You try to push the thought from your mind and come to a firm decision.
Do you stay the night in the hotel, attempt to leave in the dead of night, or continue your investigation?
I'll continue with my investigation.
You collect yourself and step out into the mist, determined to get to the bottom of this. The fog is thick and night has fallen. At this stage, you have few, if any, leads to investigate. While this is far from ideal, your best option seems to be patrolling the streets, looking for something out of the ordinary, more so than what you've already seen. You begin cautiously walking down the streets, making sure to keep a brisk pace and an open ear for anything that might be lurking in the mist. The streets are eerily silent except for your own footsteps. You pass houses and places of business. Little seems to stand out at first, but with a little persistence and luck, you might just find something.
Okay, this is where that luck refresh came in handy, seeing as you spent most of it in your last adventure. Okay, let's have a luck roll and let's see just where we get with this, shall we?
88.
Ooh, that's a fail.
Okay.
And of course, you can't spend luck on a luck roll.
Just imagine if you could.
Let's just find out what happens, shall we?
Lock and look. It's like a bag in a bag. It's lock and look.
You wander for some time, unable to find anything. Feeling frustrated and hopeless, your worries are compounded as the ground beneath you becomes damp. At first you simply tell yourself it's the fog, but as the water rises over the tops of your toes and then past your ankles, you cannot deny that Esbury is rapidly flooding. You splash about the town street, contemplating giving up, when you hear a sudden and horrid squelching sound to your right. You turn in terror as something distended and misshapen lunges at you out of the mist. You have only a moment to react.
Right, let's make a dodge roll.
Real life, I'm not good at dodging.
You're not very good as your character either.
Why am I not good at this kind of stuff? No, wait. 6.
6 on 35, that's extreme.
Yes! Go!
It swipes at you, but your reflexes are much too fast for it to connect with you. You manage to catch a glimpse of sickly green flesh as you turn quickly and spin out of its reach. You turn and run, not stopping to confirm your attacker's identity. You cover as much distance as you can in as short a time as possible. You run down numerous streets and alleyways before you eventually feel comfortable enough to pause and reassess the situation. By this point, the water has risen to your calves and is swiftly approaching knee level. At the rate of the water's rising, you don't have time to search the town any further. You must look to your self-preservation, especially with those strange things lurking in the fog. You can just make out the church's silhouette through the mist. With no other real options, the prospect of rising above the tide in the church's belfry seems like a good idea. You rush inside the quiet holy space and quickly begin climbing the steps towards your hoped-for salvation. On reaching the top of the stairs, you emerge into the belfry and find yourself looking down on the rapidly flooding, fog-shrouded town. You glance out at the lake, which is no longer covered by the fog. You see the surface swelling and falling strangely beneath unnatural, massive waves, as well as the stars and gibbous moon reflected in the seething water. You find yourself in relative safety. You finally have a moment to pause and reflect. You take a deep breath, bowing your head in thought, or perhaps prayer. Your mind is in a whirl, but eventually a single thought breaks through, a determining course of action.
Now, you don't know any ritual chants to help from this situation.
This shot chicken nugget, my younger sister should be there.
You resolve to simply wait it out. You have a wonderful view of the spectacle that unfolds. The waters of the lake rise continuously and rapidly. It's now at the point where it must be over some of the buildings in Esbury, though you cannot see into the thick fog below. You wonder at the loss of life and property. Though the lake continues to rise, seemingly without source and without end, this is the least of the oddities to transpire. Through the mist, you spot scattered flames illuminating sections of the town. You find this especially strange since there seems to be no discernible pattern or reason for it, especially in a place that must be half submerged by now. Perhaps the fires are on the roofs of the taller buildings, but what could be the purpose of that? All the while there is screaming, the howls of people afraid of the water, the desperate cries of the lost, the startled shouts of those woken from sleep to find themselves in grave danger, and the more primal screams of abject terror. You glance back towards the lake itself, wanting to turn your attention away from the horrible suffering in town. You see the water rising in great rippling waves, all emanating from a single point. You try to find their exact origin. Bizarrely, the spot seems to correspond with the moon's reflection. You are unable to make out any details of what might be causing the waves, though. You absent-mindedly direct your gaze towards the gibbous hanging moon overhead, and note that another baffling sight greets you. Great clouds of mist seem to be rising towards the moon from the ground, extending in long, wispy columns up into the heavens, or perhaps streaming down from above. You're uncertain which, or if it even matters. You do not think it does. Looking back towards the town, you find it all beneath the water now, save for your little island. The waves crest a mere 12 inches below your feet, and you know there is no escaping the rising tide. Resigned as you are to your fate, you still aren't prepared for what happens next. The waves stop suddenly. Everything falls silent and still. Then a long, lizard-like head rises from the water. It is covered in scales coloured like the sea. The detestable lizard thing's mouth opens, revealing rows of needle-like teeth as it emits a hissing sound that pierces the night and your very soul. And then its eyes open. Orbs of pure malevolence fix themselves on you. It watches you for a second, a minute, an eternity. And then the stones beneath your feet shift, and you tumble into the water. You know it's the lizard thing's doing, although it hasn't moved since its head broke free of the lake. As you sink beneath the surface, you look upwards and see the horrible lizard thing darting towards you in the light of the gibbous moon. You pray you'll drown before it takes you, but fate is not so kind. Your demise serves only to feed the horrible, detestable watered lizard that is Bookrock, Great Old One, and doom of the cities of Sarnath and Esbury.
You have died. Thank you for playing. We hope that you enjoyed this adventure. Your visit to Esbury is over.
Forever.
And
How am I dead? I ran!
yeah, but you didn't do anything. You spent most of the game not doing anything. You were told the estate sale was that night. You come here to get the professor's stuff. You completely ignored that. You then didn't explore the town very much until the second day, by which it was too late.
Oh my god! No, I thought it was that kind of stuff was gonna happen later. Oh no! I'm blaming Derek the Dodo on this.
You could blame Derek all you like.
I'm still gonna be dead.
Yep. Okay. Well, that was a short one, although it was still interesting. Perhaps we will revisit it some other time. But for now, that was a very, very brief version of Alone Against the Tide. And poor Professor Amanda. Oh, well. Now, perhaps she'd become too wary after her adventures in Emberhead, and she played it just a little too safe. Which is a real shame, because you did some really good dice rolling there.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well. That's another adventure out of the way. So I guess until next time, I've been your keeper. You've been the investigator.
Hi.
And we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.